It was a quiet afternoon in the small town of Brookside. An elderly woman sat peacefully on her front porch. No noise, no attention, no wrongdoing. But within minutes, police arrived, all because of a biased call. They thought it was a minor issue they could handle quickly. They were wrong, because this woman was no ordinary person. And when she spoke 5 simple words, everything fell silent. This is a story of pride, injustice, and a black mother who forced an entire town to confront itself. The afternoon in Brookside was as usual. A gentle breeze rustled the old maple trees, and soft sunlight spilled across the worn brick street. On the porch of a small house at the end of Willow Street, an elderly black woman sat quietly in a wooden rocking chair. Her hands rested lightly in her lap, her gaze calm as she looked out at the garden. She wasn't doing anything. She wasn't making noise. She wasn't breaking the law. She was just there. But then, the faint screech of tires on the road. 2 police officers appeared as if from nowhere. They stepped out of their cruiser, eyes wary, hands hovering near the guns on their belts, approaching as if facing a hidden threat. And in that moment, the peaceful air of Brookside was torn apart. They thought this was a routine check. A suspicious woman, a neighbor's report. But what they didn't know was that the woman they were about to confront wasn't just some ordinary old lady. She was a living icon, a forgotten cornerstone of history in a neighborhood changing by the day. And because of that, what happened next wouldn't just leave them stunned, it would force the entire town to look in the mirror. This isn't just the story of a woman. It's the story of a breathtaking confrontation between prejudice and dignity, right there on a front porch. Are you ready to step into this story? Sit down, because the rest will take your breath away. Martha Evans, 76, had rich brown skin like the red earth of the South, silver hair neatly pinned back, and eyes, those eyes, deep as an autumn lake, and both still and piercingly clear. She wasn't one for noise, nor was she young enough to bicker or argue with the world. But in her silence, there was power. A power forged through experience, pain, and rising again when no one noticed. Her house sat at the end of Willow Street, once the heart of Brookside's black community. Back then, this was a close-knit neighborhood. Kids ran barefoot, neighbors greeted each other from porches, and the smell of cornbread drifted through wooden walls. But one by one, the houses were bought up. Walls were repainted, lawns were manicured, but the soul was gone. Martha stayed. She remained like a lone marker in a neighborhood transforming around her. Now, new neighbors often passed without a word. Some avoided her gaze. Others called the police just because she sat too long on her porch. They didn't understand, or didn't want to, that she wasn't sitting there to watch anyone. She sat there because that porch was her life, where she raised her children, where her husband took his final breath, and where she read letters fighting for the next generation's right to an education. A quiet afternoon in Brookside, a small town where the wind sways old maple trees and sunlight bathes the brick streets. At the end of Willow Street, Martha Evans, a 76-year-old, a black woman, sits on her porch in a rocking chair. She's calm, gazing at her garden, doing nothing to disturb the peace. 2 police officers arrive, summoned by a neighbor's biased call. They approach with caution, hands near their weapons, treating Martha as a potential threat. They expect a quick resolution. They're wrong. Martha Evans is no ordinary resident. With deep brown skin, silver hair, and eyes that hold both serenity and strength, she carries a lifetime of resilience. Her home, once part of a vibrant black community, is now a relic in a gentrified neighborhood. She stays, a living symbol of a fading history, sitting on the porch where she raised her family and fought for justice. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's a clash between prejudice and dignity, unfolding in the open air of a small-town porch. Martha's presence challenges the new Brookside, and what happens next will force the town to confront its own biases. Martha's response, 5 simple words, will silence the officers and spark a reckoning. This is a tale of pride, injustice, and a woman who reminds a community what it means to stand tall. For newcomers, she might be a stranger, but to this place, she was a living memory. Every afternoon, as the sunset cast shadows over her wilting garden, Martha sat quietly in her old rocking chair. Not because her legs were tired, but because it was her way of telling the world, I'm still here. I won't disappear. Not everyone needs to wave a banner to resist. Some just sit still. Lindsay Parker, a white woman in her 30s with blonde hair tied high and her face taut with self-imposed responsibility, hurried down Willow Street with her small poodle in tow. She hadn't lived here long, barely 2 years, but she'd already appointed herself the guardian of the neighborhood's standards. Every afternoon, Lindsay passed Martha Evans' porch, and every time she glanced at the elderly woman with a mix of curiosity, unease, and suspicion. Martha did nothing. She just sat, sipping tea from a chipped porcelain cup, her eyes following the sunset. But to Lindsay, that was not normal. That day, maybe because the sun was too harsh, or because Lindsay's mind was tangled with neighborhood council drama, she pulled out her phone, her hand trembling slightly, and dialed 911. I want to report a suspicious person acting strangely. She's sitting there, staring at my house. I'm scared something's wrong. She didn't mention that Martha was a long-time neighbor. She didn't say Martha was doing what she always did. She just said what she felt. No evidence was needed. A call that lasted less than a minute. But it was enough to ignite a chain of events no one could have foreseen. Within minutes, the wail of a police siren tore through the quiet of Willow Street like a knife. 2 officers arrived, not to greet, but to investigate. Martha's peaceful life, survivor of decades of racial segregation, was suddenly thrust into a whirlwind of prejudice. One biased call, one baseless suspicion, and a mistake this neighborhood would never forget. Ready for part 4. The police arrive, and the tension is like a taut wire. The sound of tires rolling slowly on the hot asphalt was like a warning. A black and white patrol car stopped right in front of 14 Willow Street. 2 officers stepped out, one older, his posture rigid, eyes sharp as a blade, the other younger, hesitant, his gaze flickering downward. No one knocked. They walked straight toward Martha Evans, still seated quietly in her creaky rocking chair, still holding her tea, her eyes still fixed on the maple trees bathed in the glow of dusk. "Ma'am," the older officer said, his voice cold and clipped. "We received a report of suspicious behavior at this address. What are you doing here?" Martha slowly lifted her head, unruffled. Her eyes were calm, not bowing, not retreating. "I'm sitting on my porch," she said, her voice so steady it was almost haunting. "As I've done for 40 years. But the older officer didn't soften. He studied her face, his gaze heavy, not seeking answers, but searching for a reason, an excuse. The younger officer stood back, his hand trembling slightly, his eyes darting between Martha and a security camera on a nearby house. He could see it. Nothing was wrong, but neither said a word. The air grew thick, ready to snap. Neighbors' footsteps shuffled behind curtains. Someone raised a phone, secretly recording. Martha sat still, but every word she spoke, every look she gave, was a reminder that she was not invisible. And the officers. They'd stepped into what seemed like a routine call, but it carried the weight of a generation judged. A quiet afternoon in Brookside, a small town where the wind sways old maple trees and sunlight bathes the brick streets. At the end of Willow Street, Martha Evans, a 76-year-old black woman, sits on her porch in a rocking chair. She's calm, gazing at her garden, doing nothing to disturb the peace. Lindsay Parker, a new neighbor, misinterprets Martha's quiet presence as suspicious and calls 911. 2 police officers arrive, summoned by this biased report, approaching with caution, hands near their weapons, treating Martha as a potential threat. They expect a quick resolution. They're wrong. Martha Evans is no ordinary resident. With deep brown skin, silver hair, and eyes that hold both serenity and strength, she carries a lifetime of resilience. Her home, once part of a vibrant black community, is now a relic in a gentrified neighborhood. She stays, a living symbol of a fading history, sitting on the porch where she raised her family and fought for justice. The officers question Martha's presence on her own porch, ignoring her calm explanation that she's lived there for 40 years. The older officer searches for a reason to escalate, while the younger one hesitates, sensing the truth but staying silent. The tension is palpable as neighbors watch, some recording the scene. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's a clash between prejudice and dignity, unfolding in the open air of a small-town porch. Martha's unwavering composure challenges the officers' assumptions and the neighborhood's biases. Martha's response, 5 simple words, will silence the officers and spark a reckoning. This is a tale of pride, injustice, and a woman who reminds a community what it means to stand tall. The tension wasn't just in the commands, it was in the silences, the glances, and the truth that an elderly black woman was no longer safe, even on her own porch. And they, the ones meant to protect the community, were the ones fanning the flames of suspicion. The air on the porch was now thick, like a storm about to break. Officer Granger stood close to Martha, his breathing heavy. His hand rested lightly on his belt, inches from his gun. "We need you to stand up, ma'am. You're coming to the station for further questioning." Martha didn't move, no shouting, no pleading. She simply raised her head and looked straight into Granger's eyes with the same gaze that once silenced an entire high school history class when she was a teacher. "I've been sitting here since lunch. If you need a statement, I'll give it right here, in front of the neighbors, in front of the camera on your chest." Granger's grip tightened on his holster. "You're obstructing an investigation. Last time, stand up." The air shattered like cracked glass. A few neighbors stepped out of their homes. A phone switched to live stream. A child whispered, "They're going to arrest her." And then Martha spoke, soft as a breeze, sharp as a blade. "You want to arrest me? You'll have to carry me off this chair. Make sure the whole town's watching." 5 words, 1 sentence. But it stopped Granger in his tracks, because he knew he wasn't just facing an old woman. He was facing an icon. The younger officer, Daniels, stood behind, swallowing hard. He was clearly wavering. But Granger pressed forward. His boots creaked on the wooden porch like a clock ticking down to a meteor explosion. Martha sat still, her posture that of someone unmovable, who didn't need to shout to be heard. She didn't want to be the center of attention, but she wouldn't let herself be erased. And what happened next would never be erased from this neighborhood's memory. Ready for part 6, at the critical moment, the arrival that changes everything. Just as Officer Granger prepared to take one more step, one step that could turn the situation into a tragedy, a low rumble echoed from the end of the street. Not a police car. Everything froze. Granger, Daniels, and the neighbors are recording on their phones. A sleek black SUV turned the corner onto Willow Street. Tinted windows, tires rolling slowly but deliberately. It stopped right in front of Martha's gate. Martha didn't need to look. She just smiled faintly, like a mother recognizing familiar footsteps. The door opened. A tall man stepped out. His face was calm, his navy uniform crisp without a single wrinkle. The sunset glinted off the badge on his chest. Commander Marcus Holloway, Federal Security Service. No one spoke. Only the wind rustled through the trees, whispering, everything just changed. Granger blinked, stepping back instinctively. Daniel stood frozen. Marcus walked forward, not fast, not slow, but each step carried the weight of someone who'd faced down misused power before. A quiet afternoon in Brookside, a small town where the wind sways old maple trees and sunlight bathes the brick streets. At the end of Willow Street, Martha Evans, a 76-year-old black woman, sits on her porch in a rocking chair. She's calm, gazing at her garden, doing nothing to disturb the peace. Lindsay Parker, a new neighbor, misinterprets Martha's quiet presence as suspicious and calls 911. 2 police officers, Granger and Daniels, arrive, treating Martha as a potential threat. They demand she stand and come to the station, ignoring her calm explanation that she's lived there for 40 years. Martha Evans is no ordinary resident. With deep brown skin, silver hair, and eyes that hold both serenity and strength, she carries a lifetime of resilience. Her home, once part of a vibrant black community, is now a relic in a gentrified neighborhood. She stays, a living symbol of a fading history, sitting on the porch where she raised her family and fought for justice. The tension escalates as Granger presses Martha, searching for a reason to escalate, while Daniels hesitates, sensing the truth. Neighbors watch, some recording, as Martha refuses to be moved, declaring she'll only be taken if carried off her chair, in full view of the town. Her 5 words stop Granger cold, revealing her as an unyielding icon. Just as Granger moves to act, a black SUV arrives, and Commander Marcus Holloway, a federal security officer, steps out. His presence shifts the dynamic, halting the officers and signaling that the situation is no longer in their control. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's a clash between prejudice and dignity, unfolding on a small-town porch. Martha's unwavering composure and Holloway's arrival challenge the officers' assumptions and the neighborhood's biases, setting the stage for a reckoning. Holloway's intervention and Martha's unshakable dignity will force the town to confront its prejudices, leaving a mark that Brookside will never forget. "What's going on here?" Marcus's voice was low and steady, but it carried enough weight to silence the entire street. Granger stammered, "We're doing our job. She's not cooperating." Marcus didn't respond. He simply pulled out his badge and held it up at eye level. The cold glint of the silver emblem reflected in Granger's panicked eyes. "The woman you're trying to arrest," Marcus said, his voice even as a ticking clock, "is my mother." Every gaze snapped to Martha. She sat there, still. No need to stand. No need to shout. She'd lived long enough to know. Sometimes you just wait for the right person at the right moment, and justice will speak. When the truth came out, when Marcus Holloway, with his calm authority, no shouting, no theatrics, spoke those 5 words, "That woman is my mother." The entire scene froze. Granger stood rooted, stunned. Daniels glanced nervously at his partner, then at Marcus, as if plunged into a nightmare with no escape. Martha remained in her creaky rocking chair, holding her teacup, her eyes fixed on the distance as if the chaos had nothing to do with her. But behind that calm was a storm, diffused by a single sentence. "You tried to arrest a 77-year-old woman," Marcus said slowly. "No weapons, no threats, no crime, just because she was sitting on her own porch." Granger was sweating now. He fumbled, "We got a call. A resident reported suspicious behavior." "Suspicious behavior?" Marcus tilted his head, his voice still low but sharp as a blade. "An elderly woman sitting quietly is suspicious? Or is it her skin color that made you uneasy?" No one answered, but the small town seemed to be listening. One phone was still recording, another was live streaming. In minutes, the world would know this story. "I want your badge numbers, all body cam footage, and a full report sent to the highest office within 24 hours. Marcus's words weren't loud, but each one was a command. Granger swallowed hard. Daniels avoided Marcus's gaze. They knew this wasn't just routine civilian interaction anymore. It was a grave mistake, and they'd chosen the wrong person. Martha, watching her son stand tall in the sunset, his back straight, shoulders broad, and eyes resolute, said nothing. But if you look closely, you'd see her hands grip the arms of her chair, not from fear, from pride, because the man silencing the town was once the boy she taught. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand tall and speak the truth. Gus! As the community rallied behind the elderly woman, a quiet but earth-shaking confrontation on that old porch sparked a tidal wave. The video, capturing everything from the officer's approach to Marcus revealing their bond, spread like wildfire. A quiet afternoon in Brookside, a small town where the wind sways old maple trees and sunlight bathes the brick streets. At the end of Willow Street, Martha Evans, a 77-year-old black woman, sits on her porch in a rocking chair. She's calm, gazing at her garden, doing nothing to disturb the peace. Lindsay Parker, a new neighbor, misinterprets Martha's quiet presence as suspicious and calls 911. Two police officers, Granger and Daniels, arrive, treating Martha as a potential threat. They demand she stand and come to the station, ignoring her calm explanation that she's lived there for 40 years. The tension escalates as Granger presses Martha, searching for a reason to escalate, while Daniels hesitates, sensing the truth. Neighbors watch, some recording, as Martha refuses to be moved, declaring she'll only be taken if carried off her chair, in full view of the town. Her 5 words, "That woman is my mother," stop Granger cold, revealing her as an unyielding icon. Just as Granger moves to act, a black SUV arrives and Commander Marcus Holloway, a federal security officer and Martha's son, steps out. His calm authority and revelation that Martha is his mother frees the scene, shifting the power dynamic and exposing the officer's misjudgment. Marcus demands badge numbers, body cam footage, and a report to the highest office, while Martha's quiet dignity underscores the gravity of the officer's mistake. The confrontation, recorded and live-streamed, goes viral, forcing the town to confront its biases. This isn't just a misunderstanding, it's a clash between prejudice and dignity, unfolding on a small-town porch. Martha's unwavering composure and Marcus's intervention challenged the officer's assumptions and the neighborhood's biases, sparking a community-wide reckoning. The viral video amplifies Martha's story, rallying the community and beyond to demand accountability. Her quiet strength and Marcus's resolute truth-telling leave a lasting mark on Brookside, proving that justice can begin with a single moment of courage. The internet erupted. The press dubbed it the porch incident, a confrontation right on a front porch. But it wasn't just angry comments. Something unexpected happened. Hartsville began to wake up. Neighbors who'd once passed Martha's house in silence started to act. A few left flowers at her gate. One slipped a handwritten note under her door. "I'm sorry I never saw you." Mrs. Wilson, a widow 3 houses down, knocked the next morning, trembling as she said, "They questioned me too for watering my plants at night." At the town meeting, packed like never before, people who'd never spoken stood up to share their stories. A mail carrier said, "I've delivered to Ms. Martha for 15 years. That day, I drove by and did nothing. I'm sorry." Each word, each glance, each pause after an apology cracked the invisible wall that had surrounded Martha for years. Marcus didn't speak at the meeting. He sat quietly in the back row, hands clenched, eyes red. And Martha, the small, slightly stooped woman, came too, not to accuse, not to condemn, but to witness the most important thing. Her silence was finally being heard. Marcus took action, and the system shook. That afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the old stained glass window of their home, Marcus sat beside his mother. His eyes no longer held the worry of a son. They carried the resolve of a commander stepping into a battle he had to win. The first call went to the Director of Internal Affairs. The second is the State Internal Oversight Unit. Then to the Secretary of the Attorney General. Every word Marcus spoke was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "I don't want apologies. I want action. I don't need reports. I need suspensions. I don't care about their image. I care about the truth." Within 48 hours, the personnel files of both officers, Donnelly and Marsh, were pulled. Old cases resurfaced. A young black man fined for walking outside the crosswalk. An elderly woman was questioned for not looking like she belonged. Body cam footage was extracted. The 911 call from Lindsay was made public. Internal patrol audio logs were cross-checked. The system had no escape. This time it couldn't deny the truth. The next morning, reporters swarmed outside Hartsville's police station. Marcus, now in civilian clothes but carrying the same authority as if in uniform, stepped to the podium. He wasn't angry, he didn't shout. He spoke clearly, decisively. The woman they tried to dismiss is my mother. But this story isn't just hers. It's the story of hundreds, thousands of others, people who don't have someone show up in time. I'm not acting because she's my mother. I'm acting because she's a citizen, and every citizen deserves respect. Both officers were suspended indefinitely. A comprehensive review of racial bias incidents over the past decade was launched. The mayor, silent for so long, was forced to hold a public hearing under pressure from the community. Martha didn't attend the press conference. She sat in her old rocking chair, as always, quietly watching the flowers bloom on her porch. But for the first time in years, someone stopped to nod hello. A young person approached and asked, "Do you need help watering the plants, ma'am?" And she knew the fight her son was waging wasn't just for her. It was for everyone who never had a chance to be heard. A quiet afternoon in Brookside, a small town where the wind sways old maple trees and sunlight bathes the brick streets. At the end of Willow Street, Martha Evans, a 77-year-old black woman, sits on her porch in a rocking chair. She's calm, gazing at her garden, doing nothing to disturb the peace. Lindsay Parker, a new neighbor, misinterprets Martha's quiet presence as suspicious and calls 911. Two police officers, Donnelly and Marsh, arrive, treating Martha as a potential threat. They demand she stand and come to the station, ignoring her calm explanation that she's lived there for 40 years. The tension escalates as Donnelly presses Martha, searching for a reason to escalate, while Marsh hesitates, sensing the truth. Neighbors watch, some recording, as Martha refuses to be moved, declaring she'll only be taken if carried off her chair, in full view of the town. Just as Donnelly moves to act, a black SUV arrives, and Commander Marcus Holloway, a federal security officer, and Martha's son steps out. His calm revelation, "That woman is my mother," freezes the scene, exposing the officer's misjudgment and shifting the power dynamic. Marcus demands badge numbers, body cam footage, and a report to the highest office. The confrontation, recorded and live-streamed, goes viral as the porch incident, sparking outrage and introspection. Neighbors leave flowers and apologies, and the community begins sharing their own stories of bias at a packed town meeting. Marcus's relentless pursuit, calling internal affairs, state oversight, and the Attorney General's office, forces accountability. The officers' records reveal prior biased incidents, and their body cams and Lindsay's 911 call are made public. Both are suspended, and a decade-long review of racial bias cases is launched. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's a clash between prejudice and dignity, unfolding on a small-town porch. Martha's quiet strength and Marcus's resolute truth-telling rally the community, forcing Hartsville to confront its biases and sparking a broader demand for justice. The porch incident leaves a lasting mark, not just on Hartsville but nationwide, as Martha's dignity and Marcus's actions inspire change. The community's awakening and the systemic reckoning prove that one moment of courage can redefine justice for those long unheard. When courage awakens a town. As night fell over Hartsville, the quiet little town was no longer the same. On every porch, in every small conversation at the corner store, people spoke of Martha. No longer the strange old lady sitting silently. She was the symbol of an awakening. The community meeting at the town's largest church was unprecedented. Elders, teenagers, young parents with babies in arms, everyone showed up. They shared what they'd endured, being followed in grocery stores, cold glances for the color of their skin, their kids stopped for driving, a car, too nice. And in the front row, Martha sat, steady, quiet, her eyes touching the heart of every person there. The mayor of Hartsville spoke, but this time not with arrogance or excuses. He bowed his head and admitted, "We've been silent too long. We've let prejudice burrow into our system. Today, we start making it right." Schools in the area launched classes on social justice. The patrol team was restructured. New officers were chosen from the community itself. An anonymous reporting portal was created for residents to flag misconduct without fear of retaliation. And then, something unexpected. A major New York news outlet sent a film crew to Hartsville. They made a short documentary called The Woman Who Didn't Stand. On screens everywhere, the image of Martha, sitting calmly in her rocking chair, teacup in hand, became an icon. Dignity doesn't need to be loud. Strength can be staying still. And real change begins with those who refuse to disappear. That night, as streetlights flickered outside, Marcus sat beside his mother. "Things are changing, Mom," he said. She smiled, resting her hand on his. "You know why? Because you showed up at the right time. And because I never left. If this story left you speechless, share it. Because somewhere out there are still porches, gazes, people being forgotten. And you might be the one to help them be seen. See, sometimes strength isn't in a fist. It's not in a shout. It's in the quiet refusal to leave. In the way one woman sat still and shook a system. If you've ever felt overlooked, forgotten, or pushed aside, remember Martha. And remember, you don't need to change to be accepted. The world needs to change to learn to see you. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're quietly fighting every day, we see you. We stand with you. A quiet afternoon in Hartsville, a small town where the wind sways old maple trees and sunlight bathes the brick streets. At the end of Willow Street, Martha Evans, a 77-year-old black woman, sits on her porch in a rocking chair. She's calm, gazing at her garden, doing nothing to disturb the peace. Lindsay Parker, a new neighbor, misinterprets Martha's quiet presence as suspicious and calls 911. Two police officers, Donnelly and Marsh, arrive, treating Martha as a potential threat. They demand she stand and come to the station, ignoring her calm explanation that she's lived there for 40 years. The tension escalates as Donnelly presses Martha, searching for a reason to escalate, while Marsh hesitates, sensing the truth. Neighbors watch, some recording, as Martha refuses to be moved, declaring she'll only be taken if carried off her chair in full view of the town. Just as Donnelly moves to act, a black SUV arrives, and Commander Marcus Holloway, a federal security officer and Martha's son, steps out. His calm revelation, "That woman is my mother," freezes the scene, exposing the officer's misjudgment and shifting the power dynamic. Marcus demands badge numbers, body cam footage, and a report to the highest office. The confrontation, recorded and live-streamed, goes viral as the porch incident. Neighbors leave flowers and apologies, and the community shares stories of bias at a packed town meeting, cracking the wall of silence around Martha. Marcus's calls to internal affairs, state oversight, and the Attorney General's office force accountability. The officers' records reveal prior biased incidents, and their body cams and Lindsay's 911 call are made public. Both are suspended, and a decade-long review of racial bias cases begins. The mayor holds a public hearing under community pressure. The viral video sparks a town-wide awakening. Neighbors act, leaving flowers, apologies, and sharing their own experiences. Schools teach social justice, patrols are reformed, and an anonymous reporting portal is created. A documentary, The Woman Who Didn't Stand, cements Martha's image as an icon of quiet dignity. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's a clash between prejudice and dignity on a small-town porch. Martha's unwavering strength and Marcus's truth-telling rally, Hartsville and beyond, proving one moment of courage can redefine justice for the unheard. Martha's refusal to leave her porch and Marcus's stand for truth awaken a town and inspire a nation. The story shows that strength lies in staying still, and change begins with those who refuse to be erased. Hartsville's transformation reminds us justice starts when silence ends.